right, NAI football fans, welcome back to another edition of the NAIF Ball live show, a flag football edition. Cannot wait for another great season of flag football, and helping me out this year, the man, the myth, the legend, my flag football better half, don't tell my wife, Angelo Pontello, the peanut butter to my broadcasting jelly. Oh man, Angelo, it's still a little cold, but it is flag time, baby.
Corey, I never thought in 2 years of covering this that I would ultimately get an opportunity to finally do something with you, especially in this podcasting. So I'm super stoked about it. I can't wait to see what 2024 has to bring. We got so many exciting storylines heading into this season. I mean, if you want to talk about the upcoming best season yet, it's 2024. And I firmly believe that. And, I can't wait to dive into seeing what the other teams are doing, especially as we come up to an exciting season opener in the next couple of weeks.
This year we've got more teams than ever. We've got, oh man, we've increased our ranking to a top 6 just due to how many teams that we've got coming in. We've got teams coming in next year that didn't quite make it this year. We've got teams that are just coming in left, right, and center. I mean, Angelo, I think the home office in Kansas City might have been right. This might be the first sport to be able to get every NAIA school playing it.
Absolutely. And I know that you and I have talked about it, a number of times, through conversation and talking with others, but there's a reason why this flag football sport is growing. And again, not just in women's collegiate realm, but even in adults and around the country. I mean, again, you have the Birmingham Flag Football World Games last year. You're going to have the World Olympic Flag Football Games in LA in 2028. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. And for you and I, we both knew this 2 years ago that it was coming, but now we're seeing the rest of the country starting to get on board with it, starting to see what's going on. And like I was telling other people, it's like if you want to gain traction, now's the time to get involved with flag football before the rest of the country catches on. I mean, even you look at yesterday with NFL flag football that they did in the Pro Bowl game and some excitement that's gone on with those players as well, some exciting highlights to see. So really it is catching on in this nation by storm, let alone within the NAIA and collegiate realm.
Two things about the Olympics there. One, we are going to roast every other country, and it's not even going to be close. But two, if we think that we're going to take a bunch of NFL guys and chunk them on a flag football field, it'll be fine. We're sorely mistaken. This is not a game where you can just go straight over and be all right. It's a more fluid sport.
I could see maybe the men's team on the USA doing some serious damage, but hopefully we don't have Diana Flores from the Mexican national team listening onto this broadcast along with a few others as well, because they may have something to say about USA just going through the competition and roasting through everybody. So, again, it just goes to show you, again, even on this side of the world where, whether it's Mexico, the US, Italy on the men's side, I mean, there's a lot of excitement when it comes to just how much traction it's gotten on just internationally, too. We're talking about just the USA here, but even from a world standpoint, it's amazing how quickly it's growing amongst other sports. And again, like I mentioned with Diana Flores, someone who is a icon, not just for Mexico, but also for young women that are looking to aspire themselves to be something. And, just the role model that she is and what she's been doing and just being capable of is, you can't really put a price tag on it, but it just goes to show you again of how much of an impact the sport has to athletes that they can go out and be just another example to young kids growing up.
Well, without further ado, let's unveil our top 6 here. More voters this year. Of course, with flag football getting more traction, there's more people that want a piece of this pie, that want to come in and vote, and I'm here for it. 7 voters coming in from coast to coast here as we take a look. And number 1 is, very unsurprisingly, the Ottawa Braves, coming in with 6 out of 7 first place votes. I mean, there's no surprise there when you've got literally everyone coming back. I mean,
Cory, this is a senior-laden team now. You look at and this was going to be a point I was going to mention a little bit later in the show, but I might as well go ahead and bring it up now. You look at all of the inaugural teams that have played since 2021: Kaiser, St. Thomas, Warner, Weber International, Kansas Wesleyan outside of Ottawa, and their core group of players. This is it for them. It's going to captivate an inaugural collegiate career, being the pioneers of what it is with women's flag football. And again, that'll be a storyline we'll follow out throughout the rest of the season. And then when it all culminates in the NAIA, NFL, NJCAA women's flag finals, that's really going to put everything into perspective, captivates their careers, what it means for them, and what they've done throughout their 4-year journey. Some have been transferred, and yes, we've had seniors that have graduated, but when you're talking about 4 years and you're building the foundation blocks for these inaugural teams, I mean, that's just a different animal when it comes to what they've done for the program. And getting with Ottawa in particular, you got Madison Carrera, Mando Scalisi, Jazz Camacho, just to name a few off the top of mind, that have been with this program that just are building the blocks. And what a way to complete their intercollegiate storyline than to add a 4th straight national championship, winning the national title all their years with the Braves. So, I mean, it's with that going on, plus with the extra weapons they picked up this offseason, I mean, Ottawa is going to be loaded, both offensively and defensively.
Going through the top 4, you can still see some vestiges of our top 4 from last season really coming in. You have Thomas, who did get a first place vote there, Kaiser at 3, St. Thomas at 4. The vote totals there for those teams: Ottawa 37, Thomas 31, Kaiser 26, St. Thomas 25, Kansas Wesleyan 9. You can see this delineation that we're not quite sure where 5 and 6 are going to live, and Reinhardt and Warner are tied there at 6th. So we're really not quite sure outside of that top 4 who our next best squads are, but I think within a couple weeks we'll get a better idea of who's going to be that top 6.
And truthfully, Cory, as we look at and as we unveil these teams, I even think that the top 5 teams is about right. It's when you think of the top 5 teams in the past 2-3 years that have really put on a show, that have really culminated and put together, I think in terms of the order is just about right. You got the 5 teams, and then, like you mentioned, 6 and beyond, it's up for grabs. Reinhardt, I think, is a surprise when it comes to the early preseason rankings and where they've come out, just especially after how last season's end for them. They got a lot of traction, but of course they had to decline the invitation last year to the NAIA tournament just because there was a lack of bodies in the end. But the Eagles are in the right direction. They have to continue building on, and with Tony Fuller and what she's done with the program so far has been tremendous, and it's just on the up and up for them.
So let's go through the conferences and let's talk about this and really dig into it. First, well, if we got to honor the defending champs here, we got to start with the KCAC. You've got of course, a loaded, absolutely loaded Ottawa team coming back, but you've got a Kansas Wesleyan team who has lost Brianna Hernandez-Silva to transfer out to Kaiser, but has added Agent Zero from Thomas, the rusher of renown there. That's going to be great for the defense. You've got Midland, you've got Cotty and Bethel and St. Mary that are going to round out the KCAC from last year, but you've got 2 teams that are coming in that are 3 teams, that are coming in new: Baker, Graceland, and Southwestern. So a few more teams in the KCAC. I think it'll be a year where you see a little bit more parity, where some of these bottom teams are going to start to get it put together.
Absolutely. And again, just like the KCAC is continuing to add teams throughout the entire Midwest and, give or take a couple of miles here and there, a few states, Sun Conference has been doing the same thing. They add Life, Point, and Reinhardt as affiliate members. So they're up to 9. KCAC believe if I'm doing the math correctly, should be at 8 or 9 teams as well. So if you even want to talk about super conferences for this year, I mean, you could say the KCAC and the Sun are the ones. But again, with this still being relatively new, heading into the fourth year of flag football, there's going to still be more teams that jump on. And as it becomes more and more popular, getting the traction and all, there are going to be conferences that grab and they'll be like, hey, let's get our own conferences going. Because again, you look at Life, Point, and Thomas in particular. Thomas, who's been in the Sun Conference, but at the same time, you got Point and Life who are from the southern states. And once more teams join in, expect Commissioner Mike Hall to be thinking about, hey, the southern states may want to try to sponsor flag football, and then you'll have another conference in play. Same thing with others, like the Mid-South Conference, and you got Campbellsville who's nearby. They're just going to be looking at how many more teams that enter. And then when there's enough teams, I believe more conferences are going to try to jump on and say, hey, we need to sponsor this.
Yeah, I definitely think that if you could convince like a Faulkner to come in, that would be huge. They are definitely heavily invested in athletics, but we are going to see that growth. But with the KCAC, do you think it's Ottawa in the field, or do you think that maybe one of these teams might be able to sneak up and give the first regular season loss to the Braves within their own conference?
The key, that's usually one of those things where you look at the season, and if there's going to be a team that's going to be a dark horse for the Braves, I mean, it's going to be Kansas Wesleyan. Outside of the competition of the KCAC, outside of Ottawa, there really hasn't been a team that has been able to step up as yet. Now, this offseason for teams, again, we got, transitions going on. You got preparation, offseason, and, who knows what's going to happen to the start of 2024. But initially, when you look at it, again, with the exception of Kansas Wesleyan, I really don't see anybody who's going to be stepping up and giving the Braves a challenge for this year. Maybe in 2025, things will be a little bit different when the Braves have their core group graduate and move on. But as for this year, the only way I could see maybe Ottawa getting tripped up is if it's on themselves. I mean, it's theirs to lose this year. And they have to still continue that mindset where even though they're the 3-time defending champions, it's very easy to look at it and say, there's nobody that can touch us. And then you start to get a little laxed back. You don't just see it here, but you also see it at the professional level as well, where when you win it so many times, you don't play as hard as when you did the first or second time. So I think for the Braves, that's going to be their biggest challenge this year, is not only maintaining that standard of excellence that they've had, but trying to see if they can continue to push that even further and higher.
Flipping over to the Sun Conference, it's a little bit of a weird year for the Sun here. You've got Kaiser, who is coming in absolutely loaded for bear, but loses head coach Justin Hilliker, follows Coach Doug Sosha, national champions both from the football realm, over to Lenore Ryan. And so you have an interim head coach this year for Kaiser. There's a little bit of a talent outflux from the Sun. Jada Reese goes to Kansas Wesleyan. Cynthia Holmes goes to Ottawa. Thomas, I will never, ever count Thomas out for any darn thing in the entire world after, they constantly surprise me finding pieces. But you have a linebacker that graduates and becomes a coach as if she wasn't already. But, man, there's going to be some serious parity in the Sun this year.
Well, this is the opportunity now. And again, there's other challengers that can take the Sun Conference title from Thomas, St. Thomas and Kaiser. And I even think, Weber International may have an outside shot as well to try to fight for that. But, speaking in particular with Kaiser and St. Thomas, if there was a season to try to take advantage and get over that Thomas hump, it's got to be this season. Again, Jazz Roden, the best offensive weapons that she has this year in her entire 4-year career at the helm. Now you got Hernandez Silva in the mix from Kansas Wesleyan. I mean, Christmas came big for the Kaiser Seahawks. And, you also got Kennedy Foster, who is in her senior year as well. Then you pick up Ashley Clam, who's been on the rise, this young kid, freshman girl who's been playing in USA Flags, who's been trying to get to that acclimated level. We expect her to make a big impact for Kaiser whenever she's on the field. I mean, you got all these options. And then, of course, Brenna Ramirez, who had a late surge last season heading into the tournament, and she's been doing work this season as well. So, just to name a few, it's like you got so many options if you're Jazz Roden. You don't have to worry about, I only can get it to Kennedy Foster. You got other options and other pieces to work with. And, of course, can't forget Haley Young in the backfield as well. It's been Roden and Young, but now that you add Hernandez Silva, that's an extra piece to work with. And with the experience that Hernandez Silva has, expect Kaiser to basically put all their ducks in a row. I mean, they're basically going all in this season to try to go out and make this their year.
Does Kaiser notch their first win against Thomas this season, or will we find some weather delays or some other nonsense to keep Thomas undefeated against the Seahawks?
You can't speak for West Palm Beach in terms of how the weather's going to fare out, but we know that in Thomasville, there's always, once in a blue moon that something can happen. And the only time they've had weather delays was the national or the championship game in the Sun Conference, which, I mean, again, doesn't speak too much because this is just basing it off of 2 seasons of rivalry as both the Kaiser-Thomas rival heads into its 3rd season. But it's going to be tough. And, the biggest thing with Thomas is they've always found ways to come back. They've had that resiliency. Kaiser had a couple of opportunities. If we're talking about how close games were and if things went the other way for them, Kaiser would easily be 2-4 overall in the series, barring some other games. But in this particular case, I mean, they're right on the hump. Thomas has had their number. But it's going to take, a good game plan. It's going to take, raw talent. It's going to take a lot of things for Kaiser to get over that Thomas hump. And as hungry as those veterans are on the Seahawks, all it takes is for them to say the right things, to get the right motivation. And if Thomas is caught sleeping any one of these times, there's a serious chance that Kaiser may just pick up its first overall win against the Nighthawks on the series.
We're going to step away for just a moment for this word from our sponsors from AdCraft.
So you want to create and sell custom merch for your team or business. That's exciting, but where do you begin? How much inventory should you order? How do you distribute orders? AdCraft has your answers. Streamline the way you offer custom merch by utilizing our risk-free web store service. We ship directly to each customer, and we have the fastest turnaround in the game. Raise funds for your team or get merch to your employees and patrons. Contact AdCraft today, and let's bring your merch to life.
That's exactly what they do, and this is why they still are the GOATs, the folks who power our show, that outfit us and make sure that we're taken care of. Check them out for a web store. It's a good time to do some off-season fundraising if you're in football. Get some man, it's hard to get merch when you live nowhere near your campus anymore. Get your merch into the hands of your fans and your alums. Contact AdCraft. They'll take care of you. But we got to have some predictions. We got to have some predictions over here. We got to stake our reputations on the line, of course, and what's some good bulletin board material for somebody? We're used to being bulletin board material, aren't we?
Well, that's just the role that we're in, brother. I mean, you and I, we've been calling games, for Thomas for the last 2 years, or technically last 2 years, you've been calling games for Thomas. For me, it was just one. But, as you step away from the sports information world and you're transitioning on to a different realm of collegiate athletics, you still try to get involved as much as you can. And, you're still very active when it comes to, seeing what's going on in the flag football world. And that's the beauty of it. When I was at Thomas, had the pleasure of covering Chelsea Palmer and just that magical season that they had. And, for what they've accomplished, that's something that you can't put a price tag on. But, looking at it from a different lens now, just from a generic, if you even want to call it expert's view, it just makes it that much more enjoyable because it's about the love of the game, and it's about, seeing these young women succeed, seeing them do something that they love to do, and just covering it is an absolute privilege.
Well, let's get to it. Let's get on the bulletin board. There's no secret here. Ottawa's just got there's just too much production coming back. I'm just going to throw a little bit out there. Carrera's coming back. Had 4,300 yards with 74 passing touchdowns last year. Coming back is Jaslyn Camacho, who had 930 receiving yards and 20 touchdowns. Coming back is receiver Bailey Hodgins, 622 yards and 8 touchdowns. Alyssa Linkus is coming back, 903 yards and 19 touchdowns. Mando Scalisi is coming back, 554 yards and 8 touchdowns. On the other side of it, Abby Brown is coming back, 111 pulls. Suze Kaufman is coming back, 50 flag pulls, 17 pulls for loss, and 16 sacks. DJ Paris is coming back, 50 pulls, 11 pulls for loss, 9 sacks. Farron Maloof is coming back, 50 pulls, 8 picks. Nina Gravade Peralta is coming back, 40 pulls, 2 pulls for loss, 5 interceptions, 5 pass breakups. And Addie Orsborn, the do-everything player, coming back. I mean, my gosh, it's the entire dadgum roster. I mean, you said it best. The only one who's beating Ottawa this year is Ottawa.
And I mean, even with all those names that you mentioned, Cory, still a handful of them are going to be back for another year because they're just that good in terms of how they've worked together as a team. And give credit to the Sauer sisters. They have put together a system in Ottawa's place. I know the first time when coaches and others were looking at it, it seemed a little uncharacteristic when it came to flag football, but to get that consistency of winning a 3-time national championship, mojo, there's a lot that goes into it. And having the clear-cut system is great in place. You think of the New England Patriots when they had the dynasty run. You think of the Kansas City Chiefs now. There's a system in place that continues to work, and they don't veer away from it. Despite the players that are coming in, the players that are transferring in, they still stick with that system. The players buy into it. And that's ultimately the recipe that gets you winning success is you're buying into the system. You're buying into what the mantra is about, for lack of a better word. And Ottawa's been doing that for, the last 3 years. So, like you, Cory, my preseason prediction, Ottawa's going for the 4th time. And we may need to check with NAIA's athletic communications in the office in Kansas, but I can't think of the last time we've heard of an NAIA team in general win potentially 4 straight national championships. But that might be something we would look to try to look up at some point, because that would be huge too, because if there's never been a potential 4-time national champion, Ottawa could make some form of history in their own light and add to the record books when it comes to NAIA.
We'll have to check with our own Elias Sports Bureau to see if we can get confirmation on whether that would be a historical run. But I mean, yeah, right now the Braves are rolling. And oh yeah, did we mention that they're bringing in Cynthia Holmes, who has made more acrobatic catches than just about anyone in the Sun Conference over the last couple of years?
And you even look back to that national championship game. Well, we say national championship game, but with the way the RCX tournament ran, it was more like a best 2 out of 3 series if you get that if necessary game. You look at how close the Nighthawks were to winning that national title, but you also look at how Ottawa's offense was. While everything was moving in pieces, it didn't seem like there was a difference maker from a receiving end. And what I mean by that is, yes, you still have Jazz Camacho. Yes, you still have Alyssa Linkus. They can move the ball well if you give them the rock. But a playmaker, receiver that it doesn't matter what the situation is, 99.9% of the time, you're not going to stop this receiver one-on-one. And that X factor is Cynthia Holmes. I firmly believe she's going to make a huge difference for the Braves and is going to help Carrera out in a pinch a lot. You also got the way that Holmes moves around too. If there's any kind of breakdown in coverage, broken plays for receivers to get open, now you don't just have Osborne to look for. You also got the transfer from Warner.
Yep, and it's just you hate it for Warner, but you got a chance to win a ring. You got the transfer. You might as well go. But we'll see here. But you know who the GOATs are in our territory? Yeah,
Us.
it's our patrons. Our patrons are the best. They keep it going. And going in, I don't think we've ever had this many patrons of ours here. And so we'll call roll here. And so we thank DSU Cone, Bob Boone, Roger Meyer, Jeremy Vobble, Shirley LaBella, Fred Christensen, Jerry Quickle, Ace Wellen, Brett, Marty Seabolt, Nick Ryan, Hayden Ferrigno, Kyle Gregory, Tyler Pierce, Justin Hoffman, Steve Speakman, Brian Shake, Julianne Shager, Nate Soapbeer, Stephen Cutler, Julie Lout, Tim Burrow, Dale Norton, Nathan Moore, Dylan Gonzalez, Ryan, Jason Crawford, Zach Ryard, Dustin Wilkie, who hopefully won't cancel after we both picked Ottawa, Charles Flowers, Todd Nix, Sean Chamberlain, Debbie, Zach Lance, and Josue Trujillo. An all-star roster if there ever was one. Let's see. Did we get any comments? Nope. All right. Well, dude, it's been fun. Let's before we go, let's take a look and see. I don't think we have any ranked games. No, we do. Let's see. We've got Thomas going and playing Warner. That is a game that will be this week on the 16th. Some other stuff. St. Mary and Bethel are going to get us started on Valentine's Day. We are not that far away. Weber and Warner both get a shot at Thomas, and we'll see how that goes. With Thomas's roster there, a little bit of churn there, and also with a missing the coach, I think, for the first couple of games, if I remember correctly. There's a little bit of trouble there. Midland and Baker are going to do a doubleheader on the 16th, and Cotty and Bethel round out next week. I am excited. It is it's going to be a good year. Oh man, what big surprise will we find this year? I don't know. Angela, you got anything else?
And I was just thinking about it too. You alluded to it earlier, but even though we just made our predictions, in my experience, there's times where I've been known that I've had a talent for picking the losing team. Anything can happen. That's the beauty of 2024. And like I mentioned earlier on the show, I'm strongly confident that we are going to see a very exciting 2024 flag football season. You got new and upcoming players that have yet to shine, that are ready to have breakout seasons. You have seasoned vets that are trying to go out on a high note, and we'll be following them along throughout the season as well. It's really exciting. And as things have really lifted within this past offseason, again, many storylines to follow this year, many opportunities to see players rise and just really take the season by storm and, really just make a difference out of it.
Yep. One thing we know for certain, we'll be back in Atlanta in May, and it'll look a whole lot different in May than it does right now. So, for Angelo Pontello, I am Cory Thorpe, and this caps off your preview of NAIA flag football. There's always like a 30-second delay before I get it. We had